The storm was merciless that night. The kind of blizzard that makes even the bravest stay home, that erases footprints within seconds and makes the world look like one endless sheet of white. Most homes in the small mountain town had their curtains drawn, fireplaces lit, and families huddled together for warmth. But not everyone had that luxury. Daniel, a weary single father, pushed through the storm, each step sinking into the snow. His face burned from the icy wind, his breath clouded in the air. All he wanted was to reach home, back to his little boy, Noah. Then it happened. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. A cry. Weak. Fragile. Desperate. He stopped, heart racing, his ears straining against the howling wind. And then another cry, and another. 3 voices. Daniel stumbled toward the sound, brushing snow from his eyes, until his boot struck something hard. He looked down, and his world stopped. A basket. Half buried in the snow. Inside, 3 newborns wrapped in a thin blanket, their faces red from cold, their tiny mouths gasping for life. Triplets. Abandoned. Alone. In that moment, Daniel could have walked away. He could have convinced himself that someone else would find them. But his soul knew the truth: if he left them there, they wouldn't survive another hour. With trembling hands, he lifted the basket, holding it tight against his chest. Snowflakes stung his face as he whispered, "Not tonight, not while I'm here." What he didn't know was that this night, the night he found those children, wasn't just about saving their lives. It was about saving his own. Chapter 1, A Father Hanging by a Thread. Daniel's life hadn't been easy. At 32, he carried the weight of grief that seemed far too heavy for his shoulders. His wife, Emily, had been the love of his life. She had a laugh that could soften the hardest days, and eyes that always carried light. But one afternoon, with no warning, her heart gave out. A sudden condition. A tragedy doctors couldn't stop. In one moment, Daniel went from a joyful husband to a broken widower, and a single father to their 3-year-old boy, Noah. He didn't have time to mourn properly. He worked at the lumber mill 6 days a week, often until midnight, just to cover the basics. Rent for their drafty wooden cabin, food for the table, second-hand clothes for Noah. He didn't have time to mourn properly. He worked at the lumber mill 6 days a week, often until midnight, just to cover the basics. Rent for their drafty wooden cabin, food for the table, second-hand clothes for Noah. His hands were calloused, his back ached, and there were nights he ate nothing so Noah could have his fill. Still, when he tucked his little boy into bed, Daniel would force a smile. "I've got you, buddy," he whispered every night. "I'll always take care of you." Still, when he tucked his little boy into bed, Daniel would force a smile. "I've got you, buddy," he whispered every night. "I'll always take care of you." But when the lights went out and Noah was asleep, Daniel sat in the dark, staring at the wall, fighting tears. Deep down, he wondered how much longer he could keep going. He had no idea that destiny was about to give him 4 more reasons to fight. Chapter 2, The Blizzard Rescue. When Daniel carried the basket of babies into his cabin that night, Noah rubbed his sleepy eyes, confused. "Daddy? What's that?" Daniel crouched, opening the blanket to reveal 3 shivering little faces. "They're babies," Daniel whispered, still in shock. Noah tilted his head. "Are they angels?" Daniel's throat tightened. He had no answer. He just set the basket by the fire, lighting more wood until the flames roared. He warmed towels, wrapped each tiny child carefully, and tried to feed them drops of warm milk he mixed in a spoon. All night, he worked. He barely slept, rocking the babies in shifts, trying to keep them alive. By morning, the reality hit him like the cold outside. What was he going to do? He had no money, no supplies, no plan. The sensible choice was to call the authorities. Let the state take the babies. But when he looked at their faces, eyes barely open, fingers clutching weakly at the air, something inside him hardened. He had lost Emily. He knew what it was to be left behind. And he couldn't let that happen to them. So he made a decision that defied logic. "I don't care how," he whispered. "You're mine now." All of you. Chapter 3, A House Full of Cries. The next months nearly broke him. His tiny cabin, once quiet, now echoed with constant cries. Feeding 3 infants every 2 hours meant Daniel rarely slept. He made makeshift cradles from old drawers. He boiled water for cloth diapers because he couldn't afford new ones. Neighbors gossiped. Some said he was irresponsible. Some called him crazy. He can't raise 4 kids on his own, they whispered. But Daniel ignored them. Noah, still a child himself, became his little soldier. He fetched blankets, handed bottles, sang lullabies in his small shaky voice. Sometimes, when Daniel's hands shook from exhaustion, Noah would pat his arm and say, "Don't worry, Daddy. We're a team." It wasn't easy. Some nights Daniel broke down, sobbing quietly while rocking a baby in the dark. But every morning, when the triplets opened their eyes and smiled, he knew why he was fighting. As the years passed, the struggles grew heavier. Groceries vanished quickly. Shoes wore out before he could buy new ones. There were nights when dinner was just thin soup and stale bread. Daniel worked 2 jobs, lumber mill by day, handyman by night. He chopped wood for neighbors, fixed fences, shoveled snow. His body grew weary, his hands scarred, but he refused to stop. The landlord threatened eviction more than once. Daniel often paid rent late, sometimes in installments. He lived in constant fear of losing the only roof over their heads. But in the middle of hardship, love blossomed. The triplets, Lily, Grace, and Jacob, were inseparable. They toddled through the house holding hands. They laughed in unison, cried together, and called Daniel Daddy as if they'd known no other. On their birthdays, even when he couldn't afford presents, Daniel baked a small cake with whatever ingredients he had. The children never complained. Their joy came not from things, but from the love that filled their little home. Chapter 5, The Breaking Point. The hardest winter came when the triplets were 6. The lumber mill laid off workers, and Daniel's name was on the list. Suddenly, there was no steady paycheck. He scrambled, taking whatever odd work he could, but it wasn't enough. Bills stacked high. Food grew scarce. One night, Daniel sat at the table with a single loaf of bread. 4 hungry children stared at him. He cut it into pieces, giving them the larger shares and keeping the smallest for himself. When he thought they weren't looking, he lowered his head into his hands and wept. But Lily, with her big brown eyes, climbed onto his lap and cupped his face. "Don't cry, Daddy. You're our hero." Those words pierced his heart. He realized something powerful: his children didn't care about money. They cared about love. And that was one thing he had in abundance. Chapter 6, The Kindness of Strangers. One day, Daniel's quiet struggle caught the attention of a kind woman from church, Margaret. She noticed his tired eyes, the patched clothes of his children, and the way he never asked for help. Without telling him, she started a small fundraiser. Soon, neighbors who once gossiped now delivered bags of groceries. A mechanic fixed Daniel's old truck free of charge. Strangers donated clothes and blankets. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like the world wasn't against him. He realized something important: people can be cruel, yes, but they can also be astonishingly kind. Chapter 7, Growing Miracles. Time flew. The triplets grew into vibrant teenagers, each with their own gifts. Lily loved painting, filling sketchbooks with colors. Grace dreamed of becoming a doctor, often tending to injured animals. Jacob tinkered with tools, fixing broken radios and clocks. Noah, now older, became their protector and guide. He had grown up faster than most kids, carrying responsibility with quiet strength. Despite their humble life, the siblings were known in town for their kindness. They volunteered, helped neighbors, and shared what little they had. Everyone admired them. And Daniel? He often sat in the evenings, watching his children laugh around the table, and thought of that blizzard night. The night when his life had felt hopeless. The night he found them. His greatest blessing. His miracles. Chapter 8, Full Circle. On the anniversary of the night he found them, the children surprised him. They had saved money from small jobs, Jacob fixing bikes, Lily selling art, Grace babysitting. Together, they bought him something he had never been able to afford, a brand new winter coat. As they placed it in his hands, Lily whispered, "You saved us from the cold, Daddy. Now it's our turn to keep you warm." Tears blurred Daniel's vision. He pulled them all close, hugging them so tightly they squealed with laughter. For the first time in years, he cried not from sorrow, but from overwhelming joy. Final chapter, a legacy of love. Daniel had started as a struggling single dad, barely surviving each day. But through his choice to love when it seemed impossible, he created a family stronger than any storm. The triplets who were once left to die in the snow grew into living testaments of resilience, compassion, and hope. And Daniel learned the greatest truth. Sometimes miracles don't come as lightning bolts from heaven. Sometimes, they come as cries in the dark, fragile, unexpected, but life-changing. His story was proof that even in our darkest nights, when everything feels hopeless, choosing kindness can rewrite destiny. Closing call to action. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments below, because your thoughts matter more than you know. And if you believe in love, resilience, and the power of kindness, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Be kind always. Together, we can share stories that inspire the world.